picks of the week. Wall's out here to make you some money. Are you ready to make some money?
All right, and welcome back to another edition of Big Wall's Big Picks of the Week. We are back here in Studio A, back with Nate. Another weekend in the books. Nate, what's up, brother? How'd it go this week?
You have good weeks, you have bad weeks. Last week was not my best week, but, we're always looking for that 6-0 record each week, so hoping to change things up this week.
Well, we know in sports betting, having a 6-0 record, that's like finding a unicorn, you know?
Finding a unicorn in Las Vegas, I'm guessing.
Yeah, not a lot of those. Otherwise, there'd be some small casinos. Anyways, well, Big Wall, Big Picks. He is back to give us another slate in the college football weekend. He's got 6 picks lined up for us. But before we get into your picks, let's talk about, we're here in we're in week 8 at this point in the college football season. And a lot of things are really starting to take shape. SEC, conference matchups and races. You have, a lot of teams vying, even with 1 or 2 losses, still looking at, getting into potential playoff spots, starting to look at, a lot of different things. One thing that's starting to kind of take shape as well is the Heisman race, which, as of right now, it looks like a runaway for Tua Tagovailoa, the Alabama quarterback. What are your thoughts right now on how that's starting to kind of take shape, the Heisman race?
Yeah, I think we've seen kind of a trend. I think there's a lot of great running backs, that had showed promise to be kind of in this race, but it's starting to kind of look like more of a quarterback's race. Like it seems to be, unfortunately. I don't want to say unfortunate, but most years, Tua is obviously running away with it, but Dwayne Haskins from Ohio State is not far behind him. Surprising note is in the one that's kind of shining, and it's not really a position that you really hear much, is Ed Oliver from Houston. He's defensive tackle. He's in top 4 in the Heisman watch right now, which is, D tackle. I feel like is a very hard position to kind of be even in the top 10, even. So to kind of see a different position up there is, it's good to see. And you got some good running backs, and it looks like Will Greer's kind of taking a downfall. I know he was kind of in the top 4, top 5, and it just kind of seems that he's kind of tailing off. I think when you throw multiple interceptions against teams like Kansas, people will pay attention to that. So, but I think for now, it's Tua's race to lose. It'd be really hard to see a scenario where he falls off so bad that he loses the race altogether. So that's kind of where I'm at with the Heisman picks. How about you?
Yeah, I've been looking at it, obviously. You can make the case that, what team has Alabama played that's, obviously Tua's looked good, but when we get into the, the meat and bones of the schedule, they'll have Auburn, they'll have LSU, and they'll have an SEC championship game. Those are the 3 games I look to see, where is Tua actually placed among the rest of these guys? We've seen Dwayne Haskins go into Happy Valley, have a first half a little bit forgettable, but rally his team, rally the troops, and come back and provide that spark. Dwayne Haskins has been nothing short of amazing. No disrespect to Tua Tagovailoa. Kyler Murray, another one who obviously he has a loss on his record now, but is no stranger to putting up offensive stats and points. I don't rank him as high as Haskins as far as challengers to Tagovailoa. Ed Oliver, you're right. It's a great story. He's a junior from Houston, putting up crazy numbers right now. But as a defensive tackle, I'd lay him as one of the consensus long shot odds. He'd be in the Vegas world. He'd be something along 60, 70, 80 to 1 as a defensive tackle. That's tough. A couple guys I like that are shooting up the charts, maybe a little bit too late. Darrell Henderson out of Memphis is averaging a first down per carry, which is just absurd. Averaging 10.2 yards a carry. I don't care what league you play in, what conference you're in, or what level of football you're playing. When you average 10 yards a carry after 8 weeks of football, that's pretty damn impressive. You're right. Will Greer, I think, took a step back a little bit, losing to Iowa State. While Iowa State's no slouch, it's not going to look good in the eyes of the Heisman voters and obviously the the poll voters as well. Justin Herbert looked really good with Oregon. He's showing to be one of the most pro-ready quarterbacks. Now, that doesn't necessarily translate to Heisman numbers. And obviously, I've got a soft spot for my guy, Mackenzie Milton. The close game against Memphis will probably hurt him just because of the P5 bias, in my opinion, and I don't want to go down that road. But he's got a couple more games coming up that he can obviously showcase his ability. It'd be nice to get him to New York, which would be something cool to see. But you're right. As the minus 180 betting favorite, it's Tagovailoa to win. Tagovailoa to lose at this point. But again, he's got some tough road ahead.
No, I definitely agree. I think once you put him up against, the guy really hasn't played outside he's usually been playing just in the first half, and then they send down for Jalen Hurts, and, he's kind of stands there. So, I think late in the season it's going to be tough for him to, just kind of sit back and, relax versus, when you're playing Louisiana Lafayette and teams like that, it's really hard to or Arkansas State, teams like that. It's really hard to okay, wait till I play Georgia, wait till I play Auburn, He's kind of seeing Alabama football from afar, with their, rather weak strength of schedule. So it'll be interesting to see how he kind of finishes up the season. And, he did get injured in that Missouri game, so it'll be interesting to see how he kind of fares the rest of the season with that slight injury he had.
Yeah, most definitely. Not only that, like I said, that knee injury could create, could create a lingering effect. Good news for Alabama, they get Tennessee this week, although Tennessee had a big win against Auburn. And then they have a bye week before facing LSU, one of those teams I mentioned that could be tough for the Crimson Tide. Last week against Missouri in 3 quarters, he had 265 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. This year, 1,760 yards, 21 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns on the ground. I personally think Dwayne Haskins' numbers are better, but Tua definitely makes it look pretty easily. But maybe that's a product of the game plan and the fact that Alabama as a whole might just be head and shoulders above the rest of the NCAA.
Yeah, and I think definitely with, Haskins definitely goes against better competition, as well as, when you look at Haskins, Ohio State kind of went through the JT Barrett era, and I think people kind of had maybe lower expectations for Haskins. When he kind of picked up the ball, it was kind of his time to shine. But it's great to kind of see him, dominate extremely well, and he's just a sophomore, so I think we're going to be looking forward to him, as a junior, and potentially, leaving. Potentially, I don't want to talk too soon, but leaving for the draft early. So. It'll be kind of interesting to see him, how it plays out and how the Heisman race plays out with Haskins.
Yeah, most definitely. It's going to be interesting. I think that's the 2-horse race. No disrespect to Kyler Murray, but losing to Texas and then also having a bye creates kind of a prisoner of the moment right now. It's a little tough to really put him amongst the top 2, but he's still got a few games left. They'll have the Big 12 championship. They'll have Oklahoma State, left in their bag, as well as TCU. So. There'll be some opportunity for him to make a comeback, and if Tagovailoa actually injures himself, then that opens the door for a lot of people.
Yeah, it really does. That's the thing. We know Nick Saban, is excellent ball coach, but it'll be interesting to see how conservative he is with Tagovailoa. See, he may put Jalen Hurts in for more plays than we think. It just kind of depends, kind of with him, which side of the coin, he's kind of flipping on that.
Fair enough. All right, well, let's without further ado get into Big Wall's big picks of the week, and let's see. We got a good mixture here of different conferences, different games. You got totals, you got spreads. Let's look at it. Let's start with Memphis and Missouri. That's a game that I'm definitely interested in watching. Couple of big time teams that are definitely ability to score the ball is no slouch. You got Memphis who has the ability. They gave a close game to UCF last week. Missouri not necessarily close, but they definitely played Alabama pretty decent. You got 2 good quarterbacks. Obviously, everybody knows about Drew Lock as well, but I don't know. This game's shaping up to be, in my opinion, a high-scoring battle. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, with what I was kind of thinking was the under. I mean, with whenever you start to see the points total, in the mid 70s, you always kind of tip your cap. And you're like, okay, how predictable is this? But I mean, you're right. I mean, it's kind of two quarterbacks that I think are good. With Locke, I mean, the production from Locke this year compared to last year is not what it was. So that's why I'm kind of leaning towards the under because I mean, Locke threw for 44 touchdowns last year. So far this year he has 12. So I mean, if we're halfway through the season through this week, he's projected to get 24, 25 touchdowns. So I mean, offensively, Missouri's offense, is good, and they do put up the points, but I think it's the production is down from Drew Lock from last year. And as far as like Memphis, I mean, in their last 6 games they played, 66, even though they're a high-flying scoring offense, 66% of their games have gone under in the last 6. So it's kind of an interesting stat for a team that, loves to put up points. And, defensively with Mizzou, to kind of see, in the SEC, I mean, they play the best teams every week. They're allowing 30 points a game on defense. It's the likes of Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, teams like that. So, I mean, like I said, with that number kind of in the mid-70s at 74, I'm leaning I don't think it'll be much below 74, but I think it will get under this week.
Right on. I mean, you're basically looking at everything trending-wise. You're basically saying, you know what, I see the trends, buck the trends. Memphis 9-1 is the over in the last 10 non-conference games. 8-1 the last 9 games after getting 450 yards like they did against UCF. 11-4 in the last 15 after allowing 400 yards in the last game, and 7-3 is Memphis's last 10 games against the SEC opponents. Same with Missouri, 6-1 on the over after scoring less than 20 their previous game, and 4-1 is the over against 5 with a winning record. So basically, Nate says, I see it, and I will fade it.
That's what I'm thinking.
Sometimes you got to look at that, you kind of see everything trending upwards, and you say at some point it's got to regress to the mean, and this might be one of those spots. So Nate is taking the under. Memphis at Missouri, Tigers versus Tigers. Let's look in the Big Ten here a little bit. We talk about Big Ten football as one of the better conferences. We have 2 teams that maybe don't sit as high in that conference as we expect them. We have Minnesota and we have Nebraska. Minnesota came off of, even though the score doesn't indicate it, I'd say they played Ohio State better than I expected them to. Obviously, as I took Ohio State minus the 30 last week myself. And then you have Nebraska, who still looking for a win. Right now, currently the line is Nebraska favored, 3.5 points, opened up at 6. The live total is 55. 60% of the money is coming on the dog, the Gophers.
Yeah, I mean, the way I kind of am looking at it, when Nebraska plays at home, it seems like that against the spread, they are 0 for 5 of their last 5. So they're hitting at 0, right at 0% against the spread. So, I mean, and I'm kind of with you on the Gophers. I feel like they're kind of trending upwards based on, Ohio State, they look decent in that game. I mean, I've grown up as a Wisconsin fan and watching, Wisconsin destroy Minnesota for the Axe every year. It was kind of a breath of fresh air to kind of see, Minnesota not really. I mean, they weren't getting just completely destroyed, which I think everyone would expect. And I mean, they were, right halfway, to 30 as far as the spread was concerned last week. So, I mean, I think, Minnesota at 3.5, I think that's a good number. Or plus 3.5 as the underdog. I think Nebraska's got a lot of pieces that, aren't clicking this year. I mean, they've been in games against like Northwestern. They can't pull the trigger. So, I mean, to see the Gophers at plus 3.5, it was kind of a no-brainer for me. And just based on how Nebraska's played against the spread in their last 5 games at home, it just doesn't sit well for me personally, I won't be betting on this game just because, it's trash or the armpit, as I like to say, of the Big Ten. But, I do think that, Minnesota will cover that plus 3.5.
Yeah, most definitely. Like you said, Nebraska 1-4 against the spread this year, and Minnesota actually 4-2, including 1-1 on the road, which is where they'll be in Lincoln. It's a tough one to pick. I would say Nebraska showed a little bit of flash of maybe a program starting to actually find footing under them, which obviously this year is too little, too late. But it's a bright spot for the Scott Frost era, obviously as your 0-6 record would tell. And the fact that Nebraska fans may seem a little bit unreasonable, we'll call the word we'll use in that spot. Minnesota 3-3 overall. Again, it's like I said, 4-2 against the spread. You like Minnesota plus the 3.5 at Nebraska. So, all right. Well, let's talk about let's go a little MAC action here. Let's a little Saturday MAC action. We have Bowling Green taking on Ohio. You like a total.
I do, and I think it's sitting right. I got a little greedy last week. I'm taking the overs. This week I'm taking more unders just to, I know in a couple shows ago I said, life's too short to take the under, but just this one time, take the under on this one. I do think, with the history of this Bowling Green game, Bowling Green at Ohio, the last 7 games these two teams have played each other, 71% of these games are going under. So, 71 is a great number to kind of look at and see. Okay, with these games, not a lot of offense is scored. And when we're talking scoring, these teams are ranking, Bowling Green's ranked 80th in scoring, Ohio's ranked 40th. So, it's not going to be a basketball score. I would have a really hard time believing that, these teams get over the 69, which is the number. And we kind of talked about, trends earlier. Once again, I'm going against the trend. Public money's kind of all over the over in this one at 63%. So I say do 37%, and, hopefully you can bet a little bit and get a steak dinner out of it. So I'm taking the under in this game.
Yeah, most definitely. Line opened at 73. Action did pump in on the over, but the line has actually gone down. Live line currently on covers is 70. You're right. 5-2 is the under in the last 7 meetings, including 5-1 in Ohio the last 6 times these two teams have faced each other. It's going to be an interesting matchup, Never shy away from MAC action, or MACtion as we like to call it. All right, well, let's talk about Cincinnati at Temple, another game that's got big implications in the American Conference. Maybe not on Temple's side, but Cincinnati has cracked to the top 25. They'll be playing an afternoon game in Philly, looking to continue. They are 6-0 overall, 3-0 on the road, 5-1 against the spread against a Temple team that's been really up and down, 4-3 overall, but 5-2 against the spread. Right now, 63% of the money is coming in on the dog, which is Cincinnati, which to many people would probably seem a little bit of a head-scratcher considering Cincinnati is ranked currently number 21 in the world. Who do you like in this spot?
Yeah, I'm liking the dog in this one. I'm liking the Bearcats. I think they really kind of, came alive this year. They've had a lot of games where I'm like, can they stick in this game? And they've pulled the games out, obviously being 6-0. So, with Cincinnati, in their last 5 games on the road, they're covering the spread 80% of the time. So that's a really high number, or high percentage. I would kind of go off of. I think they've actually been one of the best teams besides Washington State against the spread this year. So that kind of has a big play into it. Obviously this game is on the road. But with Cincinnati, they've been running the ball like crazy. They're averaging plus 250 yards a game, rushing, which is top 10 in the country. So, Cincinnati at plus 3.5. I understand the game's in Philly, but Cincinnati's been playing well in road games. They beat UCLA at UCLA this year. They played a lot of great games. So I definitely think plus 3.5. In the American, I think they can get it done pretty easily.
Yeah, most definitely. A couple things going each way. Bearcats 5-1 in their last 6 games overall against the spread, 4-1 following a win against the spread, and 4-1 against the spread on the road in the last 5 road games. Although Temple's no slouch either. Over the last 3 years in conference against the spread, they are 21-5. They are 4-0 this year following a win, and 12-4 against a team with a winning record against the spread. So it's definitely going to be a fun battle. Temple is no slouch, although probably the talent level is higher in Cincinnati. But this is going to be definitely a fun game to watch, in my opinion. I think that there'll be some. There'll be some action in this game. I think the total might be a little low as well. So 48.5. I think there'll be some fun. There'll be some fun looking at that one as well on Saturday morning. All right. Well, let's talk about one of my favorite teams to cover in our Picks and Chatter podcast. And that's Old Dominion. A lot of people probably don't pay attention to Old Dominion other than the fact that they defeated Virginia Tech. But this year, that's all they've done. They're 1-6 overall, 2-5 against the spread, including 1-3 on the road. Travel into a Western Kentucky team that's just as bad, 1-5. Only knowing this because of you tweeting, I know that they almost beat Louisville. They are 4-2 against the spread, though, so that's kind of something to look forward to. Who do you like in this spot? Western Kentucky is currently a 5-point favorite, receiving 2/3 of the money. The total's 55.5 live.
Yeah, so I'm riding the other side of the fence this one. I'm looking Old Dominion, on the 5 spread. I think it's one of those things. You can say, they had the win over Virginia Tech, which was a top 20 win. But other than that, they really haven't won many games. However, Western Kentucky, there's really nothing with Western. I've seen that they played Louisville and they played them pretty well, but at the same time, Western Kentucky also lost to a D1 AA school that wasn't, they kind of went into Western Kentucky expecting to lose, and they kind of kicked the crap out of them. So, with Old Dominion, I definitely think, they have an opportunity, although it's at Western Kentucky, to, potentially win this game. And I think 5 is a good number. +5. I think, while the public money is going, or 2/3 of the public money is going toward Western Kentucky, the Hilltoppers, but I think it's a tough one on this one. I think Old Dominion has a chance to, they know they've had a power win this year, even though they're only one. But I think this is an opportunity where they kind of get back to their old ways and hopefully get a win and get the 5.5. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Fair enough. He's liking the Old Dominions. What's their mascot? The Kings?
Monarchs.
Monarchs, is that what it is? I saw the lion with the crown. I was like, I didn't quite know what that was, but either way. All right, well, let's move on to you got the big boy this week, 11 versus 23 or 12 versus 25, whichever poll you're looking at. We got Oregon, we got Washington State. One of 2 big battles in the Big 12 this weekend, with Colorado and Washington being the other one. This is game day right here. This is where game day is going to be. Current line, Washington -3. Over-under total is 68 right now. You got both teams 5-1. However, you have Oregon, who is 2-4 against the spread, and you have Washington State, who is a perfect 6-0 against the spread, including 3-0 at home. This is going to be a fun matchup. Washington State's been quietly 5-1, not really hitting anybody's radar, but they have a chance, really, with this matchup to take control of the North.
Yeah, I'm kind of riding the other side of the fence with Oregon on the money line. I think with Washington State, the game is in Pullman. Game day's there and whatnot, but I think it's going to be tough. Justin Hebert's been an outstanding quarterback this year. He's had a lot of big games, and that's nothing to shortcoming of Washington State, who's one of the top passing teams in college football right now. But I think Oregon knows how to play in these games. And I think a lot of the Washington State. I think Mike Leach. Unfortunately, I'm with this one. I'm kind of going. When I picked for Mike Leach recently, it hasn't gone my way. So I'm turning my cheek. I think he's a hell of a ball coach, and Washington State's having a hell of a year. I'm turning my cheek and going with the money line and on the Ducks. So I think they'll go into Pullman, and it'll be a real close game. I really do think it's going to be within 3 to 6 points, but I do think the Ducks in the end will pull it out. It's just going to be a one play at the end of the game that Justin Herbert makes a great pass, and I got the Ducks in this one.
Fair enough. It's probably a good spot head to head. The Dog is 7-1 in the last 8 meetings against the spread. Most of the time that is Washington State, but either way, unfortunately, trends against you right now. Hopefully they get bucked. Ducks are 0-8 against the spread in the last 8 meetings and 0-4 the last 4 meetings in Pullman. So, like you said, bucking the trend in this spot. Hopefully Oregon, like you said, with their Heisman candidate, Justin Herbert. Crazy stat with Washington State. I mean, you got a guy in Minshew who's thrown for 2,400 yards. That's hard to see this year. I mean, you got a guy who's gone under the radar, but Herbert's no slouch as well. I mean, it's going to be a good game. 2 good quarterbacks. You got Herbert, who has a passing touchdown in 21 consecutive games. Looking, obviously, I would imagine he continues that in this spot, but I wouldn't feel too bad having Oregon in this spot, especially plus money. I think you're probably maybe on a good spot this one.
Yeah, I definitely feel that, Oregon, they know they're definitely a team. They know how to play in these games. They've always kind of been a spotlight team. So, I mean, and Herbert's had an outstanding year. So, I think the big kicker with the Ducks is going to be, looking at the numbers. Passing defense for Oregon is about 90th in the country. And obviously with passing yards, I believe Washington State's actually first. So that'll be kind of, I feel like, the kicker of the game. Can Oregon shut down that outstanding passing game that Washington State's had this year, being first in the country. So that'll be, I think, the deciding factor. If they can hold that together and, make stop it and everything, I think they should be victorious. But if not, we could be, looking at an incorrect pick this week.
Very, very, very true. All right, Nate, let's recap the picks. Starting with Memphis at Missouri. You like the under 74 in that game. Minnesota at Nebraska. You like the Golden Gophers with the 3.5 points going into Lincoln. We talked about Bowling Green in Ohio. You like the total in that one as well, under 70 or 69.5, depending on where you find it. Cincinnati at Temple, you're going with the dog again. Cincinnati Bearcats, even though they are the ranked team going into Philadelphia. Old Dominion, Western Kentucky, you like the dog as well. Old Dominion, the Monarchs, to go in there and beat, what are they, the Hilltoppers?
Yeah, Hilltoppers.
Hilltoppers. And in the game day game, you like the road team and Justin Herbert and the Ducks. You like them to go in there into Pullman and beat the Cougars, whether it's by 1 or by 1,000,000. That's all that matters on the money line. So to recap again, you got under 74 in the Memphis, Missouri. Minnesota plus 3.5. Bowling Green in Ohio, you got the under 70. Cincinnati and Temple, you got Cincinnati 3.5. Old Dominion plus 5, and Oregon on the money line plus 135. All right, let's look down this entire slate this weekend, including games you may or may not have looked at or picked. And I want you to make a bold prediction for this weekend.
All right.
What do you got?
So I think my bold prediction, kind of looking at the slate of games, when you kind of look at it, actually, we'll go with yours first. How about that?
Fair enough. My bold prediction this weekend is that in those top 25 matchups, we're going to see 4 ranked teams go down this week. Now, I know that that's easy with low-hanging fruit, 2 top 25 matchups. So I'll take the 2, obviously, that are going to lose. But I see in a couple of spots, there's a couple dangerous locations out there that could create for some interesting, what's the word? The interesting upset alerts, I'll call it that. But I think TCU has a chance to beat Oklahoma. I think Colorado, who, like I said, depending on where you're looking at, they have a chance to really go down as well. There's another one, Vanderbilt, I think, can walk into Kentucky and really give them a game too. So I think 4 or 5 top 25 teams go down this week, and we see some big shakeup before the playoff rankings come out.
I think one thing I see that I think I'm kind of with you on this. You got the big Michigan State game this year, big brother versus little brother. I really like Michigan State going into Ann Arbor and being number 6 Michigan. I think, Michigan State's had a lot of, on and off this year, but I don't know, like Jim Harbaugh, when he gets in a lot of these big games, he just seems to struggle. So, I mean, until he wins that big one, I'm going to go with Sparty on that one. And I think another one that kind of interests me is the Mississippi State versus LSU. Now, LSU, it's coming off a huge win against Georgia. Mississippi State's another one of those teams where, they've showed promise. They've had, Nick Fitzgerald is a great, dual threat quarterback. But, I think that game is going to be a lot closer than people anticipate. I think Mississippi State will be in it till the end. So it'll just kind of be a coin flip to kind of see, who finishes out on top. But those are kind of my two that I'm kind of looking at as, being the surprising games where people may shake their head a little bit.
Yeah, you're right. The SEC alone could field some definitely some interesting matchups. I look for maybe Kirby, not Kirby, Jeremy Pruitt has some tricks up his sleeve against his old Zen master Nick Saban, and Tennessee may be able to make Tua Tagovailoa play a fourth quarter. You never know. It'll be interesting to see this weekend. Ohio State's got a tough matchup against Purdue. They're going to have to score some points because Purdue's no slouch at doing that as well. So it'll be fun. There'll be a lot of top 25 teams tested this week, in my opinion, against some conference opponents that many people probably have written off. But that's the beauty of conference play. A lot of things can happen. So
that is for sure.
So. All right, Nate. Well, as always, we appreciate it. That's Nate Wahl's Big Wall's Big Picks of the week. Big six he's got for you, the slate. You heard him there. We'll have him also on his report on 12-Ounce Sports Radio. And, Nate, tell the people where they can find you on social media.
Yep, so you can find me on Twitter, the Brickwall87, DTP process, number one. You can find me on Instagram at NWall23. You can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/NWall23. So follow me on all the social media platforms, and we'll see you next week.
Right on. It's been Big Wall's Big Picks of the Week. We appreciate you listening in, and we'll catch you next week.